The sunlight filtered through the broken blinds, casting crooked lines on the worn-out floor of the small apartment in Polis. Joe's Lavrov, just 9 years old, sat on the floor surrounded by books borrowed from the community library. He read with an enthusiasm that seemed to consume every formula and word. His mother, Darya Lavrova, watched him from the kitchen, where she prepared the only meal of the day, a simple rice and beans dish. "Joe's, don't you want to take a break?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. Her face showed the marks of years of work as a maid, but her eyes shone with pride and concern. "No, Mom. This book has a part about how stars move. I want to understand why the sky is so beautiful." Darya smiled, approaching and gently stroking her son's curly hair. "My little scientist. But remember, you don't need to carry the weight of the world so soon. Life is hard enough without that." Joe's looked up, too serious for a child his age. "But I want to help you, Mom. I want you not to have to work so hard one day." Darya held back tears. This boy, she thought, had something special. But being special in a place like Polis was as much a risk as it was a blessing. Joe's days at school were a mix of brilliance and shadow. He was the first to raise his hand in class and often corrected the teachers, which led to laughs from his classmates and suspicious glances from some adults. "Look at the genius," one of the boys would mock, shoving Joe's in the hallway. "Thinks he's better than us, doesn't he?" Joe swallowed his anger. He didn't want trouble, but he also didn't know how to explain that for him, learning was as natural as breathing. While the others were playing soccer or talking about TV shows, he dreamed of a bigger world where knowledge could open doors. One of those doors appeared unexpectedly when his teacher, Donna Helena, announced a writing contest. The theme is justice and equity. Anyone who wants to participate, bring your essay by Friday. The winner will receive a very special prize, said the teacher with a mysterious smile. Joe's couldn't think of anything else. For days, he worked on his essay, writing and rewriting every paragraph. He was inspired by his mother, by everything she faced to get him into school, and by the neighbors who fought daily to survive in a system that seemed to forget them. When he handed in the text, his hands trembled, but his heart was full of hope. 2 weeks later, Joe's was sitting in the classroom when Donna Helena entered with a radiant smile. "Class, I'm pleased to announce that one of you has won the writing contest. Congratulations, Joe's Lavrov." The room fell silent for a moment before erupting in murmurs. Joe's felt the blood rush to his face, torn between happiness and the discomfort of all the eyes on him. Donna Helena handed him an envelope with the news that he had won a scholarship to an elite school. At home, when he told his mother, Darya hugged him so tightly he thought he might never be released. "Joe's, this is a miracle," she said, tears flowing freely. "You're going to a place where you can be anything you want." Joe's held his mother's hands, looking her in the eyes. "I will work hard, Mom. I'll be someone who can change things, for us and for everyone." In that moment, the small apartment in Polis felt big enough to hold all the dreams in the world. The glass door of Collegio Santa Helena reflected the image of Joe's Lavrov, now 14 years old, carrying his worn-out backpack. As he crossed the imposing gate for the first time, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The shiny floor and walls adorned with trophies and golden frames contrasted sharply with the simplicity of his previous school in Polis. It was as if he had entered a completely different world. The first day was a test of his courage. The students, dressed in impeccable uniforms, looked at Joe's with curiosity, and some whispered among themselves. The conversations he overheard were full of terms he didn't recognize, references to trips abroad and the latest technologies. Feeling out of place, he found a seat at the back of the room and sat down, trying to blend in unnoticed. "Hi, you're new here?" asked a blonde girl with a polished smile. "Yes, I am," Joe's replied hesitantly. "Ah, cool. Where are you from?" She pressed, but her voice carried a tone of curiosity that didn't seem entirely kind. "Parapolis," he said, lifting his chin, prepared for judgment. The girl furrowed her brows slightly before responding with an "ah" that needed no further explanation. Joe's realized that it wouldn't be easy to carve out his space there. The first months were lonely. Joe spent his breaks reading or studying, while the other students formed tight-knit groups. There were times when he wondered if he had made a mistake by accepting the scholarship, but he always remembered his mother's words, "Education is the key, my son. With it, you can open any door." It was during a literature class that he began to stand out. The teacher asked the students to analyze a poem by Carlos Drummond de Andrade. While the others made superficial interpretations, Joe's raised his hand and offered an analysis so deep and emotional that even the most skeptical students were impressed. "Very well, Joe's. Your perspective is truly unique," said the teacher with a sincere smile. From that day on, something began to change. Some students started asking Joe's for help with their homework, and he saw an opportunity to build bridges. Although prejudice didn't disappear completely, he realized that his intelligence was a powerful tool to earn respect. But not all encounters were so positive. During a debate competition, Joe's was confronted by Arthur, one of the most popular and arrogant students at the school. "Do you really think you can win this, coming from where you came from?" Arthur taunted, just before they were to go on stage. Joe's felt his heart tighten, but he didn't let fear take over. He took a deep breath and remembered all the times his mother had told him to believe in himself. The debate was intense, but Joe showed a combination of calm and precision that surprised the audience. His arguments were not only logically flawless, but also full of passion. "And with that, I conclude my point, showing that justice is not a privilege of the few, but a right for all," Joe's finished, his voice echoing through the room. When the result was announced, declaring his team's victory, Joe saw something different in his classmates' eyes. It wasn't just curiosity or tolerance. It was respect. That night, back at the small apartment he still shared with his mother, he told her about the debate. Daria hugged him with the same enthusiasm as always, but also with a touch of concern. "You're growing up too fast, Joe's. Don't forget to just be a boy once in a while," she said. Joe smiled, but his eyes showed the determination of someone who knew that the journey was just beginning. The hallways of the São Paulo City Law University were vast and filled with dedicated students, many of them much older than Joe's Lavrov. At 16 years old, he was the youngest student to enter the program, having benefited from a program that allowed exceptionally talented students to start college before finishing high school. Joe's carried within him a combination of enthusiasm and pressure that few could bear. Right from the first days, his presence sparked a mix of curiosity and skepticism among his peers. Some whispered in muffled laughter about the prodigy boy, while others watched him with restrained admiration. Joe's, however, didn't let himself be distracted. He knew that his place there wasn't guaranteed, and that he would have to prove his worth every single day. The workload was intense, and the academic challenges were almost insurmountable. Between extensive readings and heated debates in class, Joe's had no time for anything else. The nights were often spent awake, studying case law and preparing for the next class. One day, after an especially exhausting class on criminal law, one of his professors, the severe Dr. Arnaldo Mendona, looked directly at him and said, "Lavrov, tell me, do you believe that, coming from where you come from, you can truly understand what law is?" "Law is history, It's culture. Do you have that in your blood? Joe's felt his face burn. The room fell silent, all eyes on him. He took a deep breath, remembering his mother's words and his own promise to face any challenge. "Professor," he replied firmly, "the law is more than history and culture. It's the bridge between those who have a voice and those who don't. And if that's not in my blood, it's certainly in my heart." The room erupted in murmurs, and even Dr. Arnaldo, although clearly annoyed, gave a slight nod before continuing with the lesson. But the pressure of being a brilliant student was taking its toll. Joes began to feel the distance from his mother and his community. Visits to Prairie Polis became more infrequent, and Daria, though always proud, couldn't hide her longing. "You don't come for lunch with me anymore, son," she said during one of the rare times he showed up at home. "You're so busy being grown up that you forget about the little things." Joes didn't know how to respond. He felt torn between honoring his mother's sacrifices and proving himself worthy of the future he was building. The turning point came when he participated in a national mock trial competition. Representing the university, Joes faced students from prestigious institutions across the country. During the 3 days of intense debates, he demonstrated a knowledge and argumentative skill that surprised even the most experienced judges. At the closing ceremony, his name was announced as the grand winner. The audience stood and applauded, and Joes felt a wave of satisfaction. But at the same time, a sense of emptiness settled in. He realized that, although he was achieving his academic goals, something essential was missing: the connection to who he really was. Back at the university, Joes found himself facing a new challenge. His next semester included a community project, something that initially seemed like just another curricular requirement. However, he saw it as an opportunity to reconnect with his roots and give greater meaning to what he was learning. "I'm going to use everything I know to help those in need," he decided. It was a new beginning within his journey, a chance to balance academic brilliance with the humanity that kept him grounded. The future continued to unfold before Joes, but he knew that in order to continue, he would need to learn how to balance his ambitions with the bonds that had given him the strength to get this far. The afternoon heat seemed to double the tension in the crowded courtroom. Joes Lavrov, now 17 years old, adjusted his tie in front of the bathroom mirror before his first hearing. His reflection showed more than youth. There was determination in his eyes. Still, he couldn't ignore the knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. This was his debut as a lawyer, and the case was anything but simple. Svetlana Morozova, a longtime neighbor of his mother in Prairie Polis, had sought out Joes in desperation. Her small plot of land, where she lived and grew food to support her family, was being contested by Agrizan, a powerful agribusiness corporation. For Svetlana, losing that land would mean losing everything. "Dr. Joes, do you think we have any chance?" she had asked the night before, her eyes filled with both hope and fear. "Dona Svetlana, we don't just have a chance. We're going to fight to win," he had replied, holding her hands firmly. In the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Joes entered the room with the most confident posture he could muster, but he felt the weight of skeptical gazes. Experienced lawyers whispered among themselves, clearly doubting that this young man had the competence to face them. "Is this the lawyer? He looks more like an intern," one of them murmured, the tone heavy with sarcasm. Judge Fyodor Volkov, known for his severity and impatience, looked at Joes with raised eyebrows. "Dr. Lavrov, this is your first time in court, correct?" asked the judge, his voice echoing through the room. "Yes, Your Honor, but I assure you I am fully prepared to defend my client," Joes replied, his voice firm despite the pressure. The session began, and the Agrizan lawyers presented their arguments with arrogance. They claimed the land in question was owned by the company and that Dona Svetlana was occupying it illegally. They presented seemingly irrefutable documents, expecting to end the case quickly. But Joe's didn't falter. When it was his turn to speak, he methodically unfolded the documents he had gathered. His hands were steady, and his voice rang out clear and confident. "Your Honor, what we have here is a blatant attempt to manipulate information. Agrazan claims to own this land, but the original records, which I managed to recover, tell a different story." He went on to detail how the documents presented by Agrazan contained irregularities. He showed notarized copies from the registry office proving that the land had belonged to Svetlana's family for generations. Additionally, he brought in witnesses who confirmed that Svetlana and her ancestors had been on the land long before the company even existed. With every point Joe's made, the room grew more attentive. Even the most experienced Agrazan lawyers exchanged worried glances. The young lawyer was not just eloquent. He was meticulous, articulate, and passionate about the cause. As the case progressed, Joe's began to earn the respect not only of those present, but also of the judge himself. Volkov, who had seemed skeptical at first, now observed the young man with increasing interest. When it came time for his closing arguments, Joe stood up and looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor, this case is not just about a piece of land. It's about resisting unchecked greed and protecting those who are often forgotten by the law. Dona Svetlana is not an intruder. She is the rightful owner of her land, and it is this court's duty to ensure that justice prevails." The room remained silent for a moment before the judge adjourned the session, promising to carefully review all the evidence presented. Days later, the verdict was announced. The court ruled in favor of Svetlana Morozova. When the judge delivered the final words, the room erupted in murmurs of surprise and admiration. Joe's felt a deep sense of relief and saw his client break into tears of gratitude. "I told you we would fight to win," he said to Svetlana, offering a brief smile, but one filled with meaning. The story of his victory quickly spread. For many young people in communities like Perepolis, Joe's Lavrov became a living example that barriers can be overcome with dedication and courage. For him, that was only the beginning of a much greater journey. It didn't take long for local headlines to highlight the story of Joe's Lavrov and his impressive victory against Agrazan. 17-year-old lawyer defeats agribusiness giant in defense of justice. One newspaper headline read, "The small living room of his home in Perepolis became a gathering spot for neighbors and curious visitors who came to congratulate him." Darya, his mother, displayed a radiant pride. "You did it, my son. You've shown the world what I've always seen in you," she said, holding his hands lovingly. Despite the moment of glory, Joe's knew there was much more to be done. With his rising reputation, Joe's began receiving countless messages from people facing similar situations. Small farmers, community members, and humble workers asked for help to resolve legal issues. He realized that his victory couldn't be an isolated event. Something bigger needed to be created, something that would reach those who needed it most. Thus, the Justice for All project was born. The goal was clear: to offer free legal assistance to low-income people and educate them about their rights. With the help of former college colleagues, Joe's put together a small team and established a community space in Perepolis. The first cases were emotional. One of the first to seek help was Dona Clara, an elderly woman fighting against an illegal eviction. With patience and determination, Joe's managed to ensure that she could stay in her home. With every case solved, the community's trust and respect for him grew even more. However, the growth of the project brought challenges. Joe's quickly realized that he couldn't do everything alone. The volume of cases was enormous, and the lack of resources threatened the continued operation of Justice for All. If we want to help more people, we need support, he said during a meeting with his team. They decided to seek partnerships with other organizations and volunteer lawyers. Slowly, the project gained more structure and reach. Over time, Josie's influence expanded beyond Parapolis. He was invited to speak at universities and events, where he shared his story and discussed the importance of access to justice for marginalized populations. His words were filled with emotion and inspired many young people to follow in his footsteps. Justice is not a privilege, but a right for all, he would say in his presentations, receiving standing ovations. However, not all was victory. Joes faced criticism from more conservative sectors, who accused him of challenging established structures. He received anonymous threats and saw his security become a constant concern. But he did not let himself be shaken. If we're causing discomfort, it's because we're making a difference, he would tell his team, reaffirming his commitment. One special night, Joes was invited to participate in a national television program. During the interview, he highlighted the impact of Justice for All and announced a new initiative, a mentorship program for young people from peripheral communities interested in law. His goal was to create a generation of lawyers committed to the fight for equality. I can't change the world alone, but together we can transform many realities, he declared, ending the interview with a confident smile. Back in Parapolis, Joes continued to work tirelessly. For him, each case resolved, each young person inspired, and each injustice fought were steps toward a fairer future. And although he knew there was still much to be done, he carried with him the certainty that he was on the right path. The sound of applause filled the crowded conference hall as Joes Lavrov ascended the stage to receive a special honor. At 18 years old, he was the youngest honoree at an event celebrating transformative figures in the fields of justice and human rights. The microphone awaited him at the center of the stage, and his eyes scanned the auditorium filled with people who believed in his cause. Among them, he spotted his mother, Daria, with teary eyes filled with pride. "Good evening, everyone," Joes began, adjusting the microphone slightly. "Tonight, as I stand before you, I don't speak just as a lawyer. I speak as a son of Parapolis, as a young man who believed that justice could be more than an idea. It could be a tool for real transformation." The audience remained in absolute silence as he shared the barriers he had faced, the doors he had forced open with determination, and the lessons he had learned helping people like Dona Clara and Svetlana Morozova. His words were both powerful and humble, reflecting the responsibility he felt for the impact of his actions. Each person we help is a seed planted for the future. And we must ensure that this future is more just, more inclusive, and more humane for everyone, he said, ending with a standing ovation that seemed endless. That same week, Joes took a major step in expanding the Justice for All project. With the support of donors and institutional partnerships, he opened new offices in other peripheral communities in São Paulo. Young lawyers, inspired by his story, volunteered to work on the project, bringing their own experiences and passion for justice. One of the new offices was located in a neighboring community to Parapolis, and Joes made sure to be present for the opening. As he cut the ribbon, he remembered his promise to his mother years earlier, to give back what they had earned through so much struggle. "This place is not just an office," he said during the event. "It is a beacon of hope for those who have been ignored for so long." The following months brought more challenges. Despite the success of Justice for All, Joes faced the dilemma of balancing his professional growth with his personal connection to the people who inspired his work. He spent sleepless nights planning new strategies, while also dealing with attacks from conservative sectors that tried to delegitimize his efforts. One of these nights, Daria found him sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and notes. She placed a cup of tea in front of him and sat beside him. "Joes, you're doing something wonderful. But don't forget that even heroes need to rest." He smiled, grateful for the reminder. He knew that his mother was his anchor, his endless source of strength. At 20 years old, Joes was invited to speak at an international human rights conference. During his presentation, he spoke about the reality of Brazil's peripheral communities, sharing stories of resilience and struggle. His message was clear. Justice cannot be a privilege for the few. It must be a bridge for all those seeking equality. His words echoed around the world, attracting more attention and support for his cause. He returned to Brazil with new ideas and even more determination to transform lives. In the future, Joes Lavrov would continue to expand his impact. Each new project, every young lawyer he inspired, and each community he helped were part of a legacy that grew every day. But for him, true success was not only in visible accomplishments. It was in the moments when he saw a mother embrace her child with the assurance that their home was protected, or when a young person looked at him with the hope that they too could change the world. And so, Joes Lavrov continued his journey, proving that knowledge and dedication can transform barriers into bridges and dreams into reality. Did this story touch you? Then don't miss out on being part of this transformative journey. Like this video, subscribe to the channel to follow more inspiring stories, and leave a comment sharing what moved you the most or how you believe justice can make a difference in the world. Your voice is also important in building a more just future. Let's make the change happen together.